You would think the most dangerous things in the Middle Ages were obvious. The plague, war, sword fights, maybe the occasional angry goose. But sometimes, the deadliest thing you could do in a medieval village was eat bread. Yes, the same loaf that sat at every table. The same bread people ate every single day of their lives. The same crusty chunk they used as a plate, sponge, and emergency pillow. Because in some villages, bread did not just feed the people. It killed them. Silently. Horribly. Sometimes while making them hallucinate their chickens were speaking Latin. And the worst part, nobody knew why. Was it a curse? Was it bad luck? Was it divine punishment? Or was it the flour? Welcome to Medieval Times Explained. And today we are biting into a dark slice of history. Why bread could kill you in the Middle Ages. From demonic hallucinations to mass poisonings. From rotting rye to peasant riots. This is not the cozy cottagecore loaf you are used to. Stick around. Because by the end of this video, you will never look at toast the same way again. Bread. In the Middle Ages, it was not a side dish. It was the dish. Breakfast, bread. Lunch, bread. Dinner, slightly older bread. From lords in velvet robes to barefoot plowmen in mud-crusted tunics. Everyone ate bread. But not all bread was created equal. If you were wealthy, your bread was manchet. Soft, white, sifted wheat. Kneaded by someone paid to never question your taste in shoes or seasoning. But if you were poor, and most people were, your bread was a dense, chewy thing made of rye, barley, oats, or hope. And then there was the legendary horse bread. A gritty, low-grade mix of beans, bran, straw, and anything that had not died of old age yet. Technically edible. Legally food. Barely bread. Bread was so essential, people even used it as a plate. Meet the trencher, a slice of stale bread so hard you could roof a shed with it. Used to serve meat, sauces, and probably vengeance. When meals were over, these soggy trenchers were given to the poor. Or, if very stale, recycled as building material. Yes, medieval leftovers were basically bricks. But no matter your rank or ration, one thing was certain. You were eating a lot of bread. According to chroniclers, some peasants consumed up to 2 to 3 pounds of bread every single day. Why so much bread? Because it was cheap, filling, warm. And when you had no meat, no cheese, and no hope, you always had bread. Even if it might kill you. But what if the flour was not clean? What if the grain was cursed? Or worse? What if something was growing inside it? Alright, so how did people actually make bread in the Middle Ages? Let us roll up our sleeves, grab a sack of grain, and lower our expectations. It all began with the mill. If you were lucky, your town had a big watermill. If not, congratulations, you got to spend hours turning a rotary quern. 2 giant stones that crushed grain by brute strength and sheer resentment. Add some water, a pinch of salt, and whatever grains you could find that were not moldy, half-eaten, or stolen by mice. Then came the dough. Dark, dense, less fluffy French baguette, more brick that dreams of being food. People either baked at home in simple ovens, or paid to use the town's communal oven, which was just like your local bakery. Except everyone's bread looked exactly the same. And fights broke out when someone stole your loaf. And do not expect perfect sourdough airiness. Rising was inconsistent. Your yeast was either scraped from yesterday's dough, or gathered from airborne fermentation magic and blind hope. The result: a loaf that was nutritious, filling, and sometimes full of chaff, grit, or bugs that nobody had time to remove. But none of that mattered if your grain was already bad. Because without modern storage, grain sat for weeks in damp barns or musty cellars. Which meant mold. And sometimes something far worse than mold. So yes, medieval bread was made with care. But if that grain was tainted, no oven on earth could bake out what was hiding inside. So, you have got your grain. You have ground it, kneaded it, baked it. You are ready to eat. Except you are not. Because you may have just poisoned your entire village. In wet, damp seasons, especially after a poor harvest, rye grain had a tendency to rot. Not in the smells funny way, but in the this will kill you way. Claviceps purpurea. Better known as ergot, a fungus that disguises itself as part of the rye grain. Looks like grain. Feels like grain. Isn't grain. And here's the kicker. Ergot is full of alkaloids that affect the nervous system. The same chemical family as LSD. Meaning that infected bread could cause tremors, hallucinations, burning pain, and limbs falling off. Yes. Falling off. The medieval world did not know about fungi or mycotoxins. But they knew something was terribly wrong. They called it Street Anthony's fire. Holy fire. The burning disease. People reported burning skin, spasms, delirium. Some saw visions of hell. Others simply dropped dead in the fields. And worst of all, the symptoms did not strike all at once. Some villagers were fine. Others were not. No one knew who would be next. So, naturally, they blamed witches, demons, sin, or bad cheese. But the real killer was not supernatural. It was microscopic. And it was hiding in your flour bin the whole time. So, your family's eaten the rye bread. It tasted a little strange. But no one's complaining. Until your neighbor starts shouting at invisible wolves. And your uncle tries to bite a tree. Welcome to ergotism. The madness that bread brought. And no, this is not just one or two cases. We are talking entire villages. Convulsing. Burning. Bleeding. And no one knew why. In 944 AD, in the Rhône Valley of France, one of the worst outbreaks ever recorded struck. Over 40,000 people died. Not from war, not from plague, but from bread. The symptoms were surreal. Burning limbs, violent seizures, muscle spasms, and hallucinations so vivid that victims claimed they were dragged to hell by demons who laughed the whole way. Fingers turned black with gangrene. Feet rotted mid-step. Mothers clutched babies who spasmed in their arms. It looked like a curse. It felt like divine wrath. Naturally, people sought answers. And when science was 700 years late to the party, they blamed witches, sin, and God himself. You name it, it was guilty. But amidst all this chaos, came the order of Saint Anthony. Black-robed monks who welcomed the afflicted. They dressed wounds, fed the weak, and prayed for the hallucinating. It was not much, but it was something. And that something gave birth to pilgrimage sites across Europe. And if you survived, you often did not come back whole. Many lost limbs, eyesight, or their minds. Others swore they saw heaven. Some never stopped screaming. This was not just a medical condition. It was a spiritual crisis. A disease that made people question their reality, their faith, and their flour. And still, no one connected it to the rye. Because the fungus was invisible. And the madness. It was just another mystery in God's ever-growing to-do list. If you were rich in the Middle Ages, you ate white bread. If you were poor, you ate whatever would not kill you. Hopefully. Let us start with the upper crust, literally. Noble bread was made from fine wheat flour, sieved multiple times. Soft as cake, light in color, and extremely expensive. Meanwhile in peasant land, you got rye, barley, oats, acorns, or if times were really bad, mashed peas and a prayer. Unlike the nobles, peasants stored grain in small, damp homes. And by stored, we mean threw it in a sack, forgot about it, and hoped it did not sprout mushrooms. The poorer the flour, the more fillers got added. Think sawdust, mashed beans, powdered chalk, or whatever the baker could sweep off the floor. One chronicler noted, in time of want, the people baked anything that would grind. Translation: if it looked like flour and did not scream, it was dinner. And the worst part, these breads were not just hard and tasteless, they were also dangerous. Contaminated grain, ergot, mold, rat droppings, all more likely to show up in cheap loaves. So while nobles feasted on soft rolls, peasants gnawed on bread that could break your teeth, your spirit, or your circulatory system. In the Middle Ages, bread was not just food. It was a daily reminder of where you stood in society, and how quickly bad luck could make it your last meal. By now, you have realized medieval bread could make you sick, mad, or dead. But did you know it could also start a riot? In the Middle Ages, bread was not just food. It was a political flashpoint. Towns and kingdoms regulated exact prices and weights for loaves. And if bakers cheated, things got ugly. If you sold underweight or burnt bread, you did not just get a slap on the wrist. You were humiliated. Publicly. Brutally. Sometimes, they did not stop at shame. In bread riots, angry mobs stormed bakeries, burned grain stores, and, occasionally, threw the baker into his own oven. Yes, really. And when famine struck or war cut off supply chains, some folks tried to hoard grain for their families. Unfortunately, this made them look very suspicious. Because in medieval logic, food hoarding equals witchcraft. In one documented case, a woman accused of withholding flour from Christ's poor was burned at the stake, next to her grain sack. Some towns took a more controlled approach. They appointed bread testers, or tastemakers, who would sample bread from local bakers to ensure it was safe. Imagine the job. Your duty, good sir, is to taste this possibly poisoned bread. Every day. Regulation reached such heights that some towns required bakers to keep 2 loaves behind at all times. One for the public inspector, and one to prove you were not trying to kill your customers. So next time you think of bread as just something to dip in soup, remember, in the Middle Ages, it was a symbol of justice, sin, survival, and occasionally, a one-way ticket to public disgrace. Bread, the staff of life, they called it. But for medieval peasants, it was also the loaf of death. They did not have microscopes. They did not know about fungus, alkaloids, or bacterial contamination. All they knew was this: sometimes, the bread burns from the inside. Today, we have industrial milling, sanitary storage, refrigerators, and FDA regulations. We know that bread is not supposed to whisper to us after midnight. So the next time you toss a half-dry sourdough into the compost bin, pause, reflect, and be grateful that it won't make you see demons, start dancing uncontrollably, or spontaneously lose a toe. As for those medieval villagers, they endured hallucinations, starvation, witch trials, and entire loaves made from mashed peas and regret. In a strange way, bread reflects the story of humanity. Nourishment, struggle, invention, and a whole lot of very questionable recipes along the way. So next time someone says bread is boring, you can confidently say, actually, it once killed 40,000 people in France. And then walk away, slowly, while holding a croissant. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more dangerously historical content. And remember, always, check your eye.